there she is. Beautiful. All right. Thanks.
I hopped the other call before you.
Okay. Whenever you want to call roll, I'm ready.
All right. Yeah, I have when I do my meetings, I have a procedural cheat sheet, but I don't have one here. So could the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, of course. Chair Collins,
Present.
Board Member DiBrienza,
Present.
Councilmember Ku,
Present.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Here.
4 present.
Wonderful. Thank you. So this is the meeting of the Palo Alto City School Liaison Committee, and the date is Thursday, September 17th, and it's 8:33 a.m. Welcome everybody. We've got a packed agenda here, so we'll move right into it. And the first item is oral communications. I see anyone who wishes to participate can raise their hand either in Zoom, or if you're dialed in by phone, you can dial *9 and raise your hand that way. And now is the time for anybody who wishes to make any comments on unagendized items. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the August 20 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to pass.
Second.
Who was that? So
I did.
oh, thank you. I didn't. You were muted so quickly again. I was like, couldn't believe you had done it. All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Ku, seconded by Board Member DiBrienza. Can the clerk take the vote, please?
Yes. Chair Collins, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member DiBrienza,
Aye.
Councilmember Ku,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Vote passed unanimously.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll move to the city and city manager and superintendent comments. And Dr. Austin, why don't you lead us off?
I think the obvious thing is everyone wants to know when we're returning. So
I read something about that in the paper.
yeah, I heard something about it. Our Board of Education will consider proposals on Tuesday, and then we'll take action the following Tuesday at a special board meeting on the 29th regarding return dates. Because I was just communicating with one of our parents. There are over 1,000 school districts in the state of California, and they're all being compared against each other right now. So not only is it a local decision, you're having to contend with districts like San Jose that announced earlier this week that they won't be back until second semester at all levels. Then we are in a unique position here, relatively unique, in that we're a K-12 district. In Southern California, they're almost all K-12 districts. In Northern California, you have the split more often than not, which means if you're a high school district, you will see shortly almost all high school districts are coming back at the semester, and elementary school districts are almost all coming back earlier. We're unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, responsible for both. So for parents, it's hard to understand why part of our schools, our elementary schools, are coming back first, and our middle and high schools are being proposed to come back at the semester. But in reality, we're completely calibrated with the surrounding school districts in our counties and the counties that are touching us. But again, it's just it's our proposal, and the board will work through that starting Tuesday. I'm going to guess public comment on Tuesday will be done sometime around Friday, so there will be no shortage of feedback on that one. But it's challenging. It's hard. It's a practical issue. It's a safety issue. It's an educational issue, of course. But it's also a collective bargaining issue, and we're having some challenges there. that are not unique to our school district. Every school district is having some issues there. So I think any other comments I had have pale in importance to that one. So I'll just stop there and call that my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council members for Dr. Austin? Because that is obviously a big event. We're going to open schools or talk about opening schools next Tuesday. Go ahead, Council Member Cook.
When you say that they're comparing all the schools, so are they coming up with best practices through the comparison, or what does that mean?
Honestly, that's a great question. So with the superintendents, we are calibrating with each other daily. I have a list that I call personally, and then we're on listservs for more general emails. So we're looking there for not only best practices, but what we can get through the process. Parents and teachers and classified staff are more likely to find a district that's doing what they want us to do and then pointing to it. And in some cases, they point to, let's say, San Jose, who's announced closed, and then someone else will point to a private school that's announced open and say that's what you should do. So that's what I mean by the comparison. A person today said, well, Major League Baseball was able to open, why can't you? And the answers, there's a million answers to that. One of which is they eliminated all other levels. They have no competitor, so they have one collective bargaining team, no comparison. And even then, they've made a bit of a mess out of it.
I was going to say, if that's what opening looks like, I'm not sure I want it.
Yeah, right. So that's the comparison part I was speaking to.
And I guess I would also say that you have a lot of stakeholders that have different opinions, or that you have to kind of take into consideration as well. So it's not just so simple. Even though the baseball analogy that you gave is just one, you have a whole slew of different ones to deal with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for an example, I talk with Ed often, and I have to ask Ed, so what does your city hall look like right now? How do you get in there? How many employees are working physically? What is open? How are you monitoring parks and basketball courts and tennis courts when you see some pretty poor behavior out there? What is your approach? And so even locally, Ed and I talk about this a lot, and it's hard, and the contradictions that you see everywhere don't make it easier, right? So I walked through a school campus that's closed, like Palo, to go to Town and Country, which is open, and you see a combination of people following rules and people absolutely not.
Right.
So there's lots of that kind of stuff right now.
Do you know at this point, what if they come back to school, what is the distances? Has county said anything about what would be the distances between each desk? How are you going to expand out for each of the classrooms? Where to expand to?
Yeah. The good and bad news is tomorrow our entire reopening plan draft will post with all the safety protocols. And it's literally, the plans put together are hundreds of pages in detail. But the two short answers for that, the 6 foot is not a requirement, it's a guideline. And cohorts and masks are seen as more important than 6 foot distancing. 6 foot is stuck in people's minds because it was one of the first things that was out there. And of course we're shooting for 6 foot, but in all of our plans, as you guys are dealing with also, we're putting phrases like, or the current guidelines, because they shift so dramatically. I mean, it could shift on the day. Our entire plan was written about not being on the watch list. Well, the week after we wrote that, there's no such thing as a watch list anymore. So it's those kinds of things that make it really challenging.
2 more questions. I'm sorry. One is, what is cohorts? And then the other one is, does that mean you're going to have to hire more teachers?
we're not going to have to hire more teachers. So a cohort, for an example, right now there are 10 of us on this call. If the same 10 only interacted with each other and did not interact with anybody else, our cohort of 10 right here would be our stable group.
Thank you.
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Actually, I have a question for you, Councilmember Koo. Oh, go ahead. My question was off topic, so please go ahead.
No, why don't you go first?
Oh, no. Mine was off topic, so please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks for the update. It's actually quite significant news, so thank you for sharing. I guess first question for you is, what can the city do to help with you guys reopening? Like, what are there particular, or do you guys even know what might be things that would be helpful in terms of making this smoother, easier, better, faster? I'm just interested in knowing what can we do from the city side.
I'd say a couple things, and I definitely don't want to get out of my lane too far here. I'd say if there are obvious contradictions to things that are safe and putting us on a path to come back that are occurring in town, addressing that in some way, whatever makes sense, helps. I think the more people are pointing to things is bad. You know, I drive by Middlefield and I see Little League practices going on with 15 kids out there, and that makes it really hard for us to say and schools are closed. And number two, lots of talk and discussion about at least employee testing, and I don't think the city has that solved. In fact, I know the city does not have that solved, and I talk about this, and we don't have it solved. And if there was a potential place for us to work together, I think that's it.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. I actually had office hours a few weeks ago where people were talking about middle school sports and how the city was doing things and the school district wasn't. And so yeah, that's an obvious contradiction. So that's actually a good point. So I understand that. So we should try to make sure that we're synced up on that. And then testing, I think I think we've been talking about this on council for a while, but it's a really important thing. And I think, we've been mainly relying on the county, but maybe as a city we should do more so that it's because I think I look at other areas and that's a big part of the reopening is kind of like randomized testing or very frequent testing.
We're in discussions with El Camino Hospital, and yesterday really seriously got in contact with Stanford about some testing options, but I just think there's such an opportunity for a coordinated effort there.
Okay, agreed. So I think as you guys figure out what things are, I think it's important for us to make sure we're synced up with you and support you in this effort. And then while you may not necessarily have more teachers, in terms of space utilization, are you guys thinking about using more of Coverly, or is there going to be more requirements for using square footage at your guys' property, or what's the plan in terms of?
Well, we love the space that we started with at Coverly, but honestly, it was expensive. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars just to bring a few classrooms up to code. And Coverly, I think it's a topic on here today, so I won't go too far in it, but it has infrastructure issues that we underestimated. So we really can't expand much more at Coverly for students right now without a significant improvement plan there. So breaking up into an A-B, half and half kind of situation where half the kids are in on one day and half are in on another is really winning the day in other districts. That's how you essentially double your square footage, is by bringing in half the kids. So right now that is our only option.
Okay. So there's actually a desire then to actually have more square footage, but you need the square footage to be correct, to be code compliant and whatnot.
Yeah, it's I guess it depends how you look at it. You can say square footage or the ratio, and our ratio, we just address the ratio by cutting it in half.
Well, can I also say that we don't we don't have more teachers, so we don't need double the space. If we had double the teachers,
Yeah.
then sure, we could use double the space. But
We need we need a teacher cloning device in
Yes.
order to take advantage.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else to say, Mr. DiBrienza? I wasn't sure if you were raising your hand for something else or just for that. Okay. Yeah, thank you. This is something I think, as Dr. Austin mentioned, and just to underscore, there's I do see we have one attendee and we got a hand up. So let me just finish what I was saying, and then I'll call the speaker. Is our plan has actually not been released yet. This is the pre-release buzz that we're experiencing. This will be discussed at a board meeting next Tuesday. Our materials post the Friday before. It's not nearly as in advance as the city posts. So we'll post on Friday, usually on Friday afternoon. And so in the Friday afternoon posting, there's a very significant document. I print it out at your caution. At your own risk. What is it? Several hundred? Is it 100 pages? Several hundred pages? It's several hundred pages. So I think it's the first 40 are actually the report. Yeah. So focus on those first 40 pages if you're going to print. That there are safety and reopening plan. So a lot of material in there, a lot of thought that'll all be that's all worthy of review and is going to get a lot of discussion. And then we won't take action at our first meeting. We'll, as Dr. Austin mentioned, there'll be at least a week, and then we'll have a special meeting the following week that hasn't been scheduled yet. And so there'll be a lot of time for community review and discussion. And I think this will be a topic of, apologies for that. This will be an important topic for the community to be talking about for the next couple of weeks. And speaking of which, we have a community member who wants to talk right now. So let's go to her. And here in our meetings, I call the speaker, but here I think it's the city clerk, right?
Yes, I can help you with that.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Penny Elson, I'm going to allow you to speak, and I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. You'll have 3 minutes to speak on this matter.
Thank you. I think I'll be quicker than that. I just wanted to interject in this important conversation about, I hope that Superintendent Austin will make sure that information about how to safely commute to school on bicycles and on foot is included in back to school information for parents. That things that kids are going to have to do during COVID are going to be a little different. There are fewer bikes and fewer cars, but the cars are moving faster right now. So there are some things that kids need to know to watch out for. But in addition to that, COVID presents particular issues as far as like wearing masks and distances apart while you're biking and walking. Kids are used to talking to each other and socializing on their way to school. But I think it's very, very important for the kids to be walking and biking right now. They've got a lot of pent up energy. They've been staying in place for many months, and they will arrive in their classroom better prepared to learn if they've had a little light exercise in the morning before they go to school. It helps them with that both an emotional and physical and mental transition to the classroom. But the physical exercise is an outlet that they really badly need right now. So I hope we will do everything we can to encourage alternative commutes for their health and their safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to hear your voice, Ms. Ellison. Okay, so I think that's a superintendent's update.
Mr. Collins,
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to share, I believe that in this past Friday's update, there was a lot of detail about safe routes to school and our partnership with the city. Dr. Austin, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't there a couple paragraphs in there explaining that the program is still continuing even virtually and that we're partnering to get kids back for when we get back to school?
There were. It was beautifully written by Miss Ellison. So my contribution was the cut and paste. So yeah, we really appreciate
Thank you, Ms.
that.
Ellison.
I totally agree with everything she said about the importance of having some exercise on the front end, especially now. 100% agreement.
Well, a prudent leader takes advice from the expert, so good job in this case. Okay, so that's the school side of superintendent, city manager comments. And Monique, will you be making the city manager side?
Actually, in welcoming back Chantal was nodding, yes, you're going to do that. But so I'm happy to do it. Yes, Chantal's like nodding, yes, go ahead. Great. So I just wanted to highlight a few things that are coming up. We have shifted our Summer Streets program, the business support and activation and closed streets opportunity to get out to uplift local. You will begin seeing more information about that, and you know, we know that families have been making use of the outdoor dining and activities, so we hope that that will continue going forward. I wanted to mention too that library services are continuing with a curbside pickup option. Unfortunately, because everything has been outside and the air quality has been bad, we've had a few days where we've had to cancel the outdoor service. We are investigating other options for perhaps opening lobbies and making that easier for folks to retrieve materials. We do have the return boxes. The return boxes only are open on Sundays at Downtown Library and College Terrace Library now. So this is an experiment to help us get those materials back from folks that live in those areas, and also helps us quarantine the materials. I don't know if you're aware, but there has been a nationwide test going on in conjunction with the Library of Congress or the Institute of Museum and Library Services and some other partners to ensure that we're aware of how long the virus may last on print materials, the plastic covers, things like that. So our materials, when they're returned, are quarantined for 96 hours to give them a chance to be ready for check-in and available to someone else. It may seem like overkill, but as in an abundance of caution, I think everything that we can do to keep the community safe is welcome. We will have a presentation from Safe Routes to School. I believe we're planning that for October. Chantal's nodding, yes, okay, great. So because of the pandemic, we didn't do their normal annual report in spring, but we will have a presentation next month. And just a reminder that we do have an email that goes out about called our coronavirus report. And that is, you can sign up for that. That's automatic. You'll get updates from the city, not only about the pandemic response, but also for us to convey other information, such as whether there's a change to library services or updates on testing locations, things like that. And just to remind you that we are working with the county on their pop-up testing program. So not this coming Friday, but it should be next week Friday again at the Art Center. And those are by appointments, and all reports from everyone who's participated said they were in and out in less than 5 minutes, and that it's been very smooth and easy to handle. We were notified by the county that the online appointment capability should actually open up at least a week in advance, or maybe it had been 3 days, so they're expanding the amount of time that you're able to sign up for the appointments. So I think that's all, unless there's any questions for me. Thanks very much, and welcome back to Chantal.
Thank you. Any questions for the, are you the deputy city manager, assistant city manager?
I'm assistant city manager.
Assistant city manager. Any questions for the assistant city manager? All right, thank you for that report. Yeah, a lot going on, and I think a lot of good work on the part of the city. I hear from people I hear from, and I hear generally positive reviews of the city's handling of the summer. Though I think you're realizing that naming it Summer Streets was inherently limited. Now you've got to rebrand.
I think we were optimistic that summer would be the end of everything. That did not turn out to be true. So
I remember back in March showing Dr. Austin a chart of the COVID case track in South Korea and saying, I bet this will be over in 3 weeks. So I similarly fell prey to over optimism. Okay,
Oh,
the next item.
We're no South Korea, so.
Oh, yeah. The next item is review of recent city council and PAUSD board meetings. And since the district went first on the last item, why don't the city council members go first on this? Council members, Ku or Tanaka?
Councilmember Tanaka, I guess I'll go first. So at our last meeting, last Monday, we are very happy that we were able to approve an interim ordinance and partner with the county of Santa Clara for safe parking, which is at a site at 2000 Gang Road, I think. And it's for RV parking. It's a temporary spot where the county is actually leasing the land and providing case management for people who are in RVs and that will utilize the site over there. The most exciting part about this is that Council Member Du Bois, actually Vice Mayor Du Bois and I had submitted a colleague's memo with regards to locating and finding safe parking areas. And while we did start on the tier 1, which is faith-based groups have said that they will allow for their parking lots, but it's only up to 4 cars and it's only during the nighttime, which is a huge inconvenience because then in the come morning, the families in RVs would have to move somewhere else. But what the county has done is that they are at this site, they're able to provide 24/7 for 24 hours, and if they can continuously stay there. So of course the program does have a goal. The goal is to transition people who are living in RVs into more stable housing, permanent housing, hopefully. So that is the goal for this program. The other thing we discussed was we got an update from our city manager about and looking for direction as to how to move forward with the Summer Street program, which Monique has given some highlights on. We also reviewed some of our state legislation, and I have to say that there are disappointments, and then there are some good ones, you know. The disappointments are mostly in the area of policing, where there was a couple of bills, Senate Bill 776 and Senate Bill 731. One has to do with certification. If an officer commits a crime, then the state would be able to remove the certification. And then the other one is about opening police records so that more of the public would be able to examine it. I think those are all transparency and also accountability bills, which did not pass. So I have encouraged that our city perhaps look into taking that legislation and returning to the makers of those legislation and providing support to them. Hopefully the school district will be part of that as well, if that is within your purview. Besides that, that would be my report. Thank you.
Go ahead, Greg. Yeah.
So I think that was pretty well covered. So the only thing I would add is that we did vote to back the school bond. So we wanted to make sure we're good partners for the school district. So yeah, hopefully all goes well. But thank you guys for making that happen.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I know we all really appreciate your endorsing, actually it's our partial tax, endorsing Measure O, which is the local ballot measure on the partial tax, which is, you know, the school board obviously voted to put it on the ballot, and this isn't a platform for advocacy, so I won't advocate. But is, as I'll mention when we review our meeting, is a critical part of our financial picture, and without it, things would be quite different at PAUSD. So thank you. Any questions for the council members? I was going to ask about that if you didn't raise it. So thank you. Mr. Branza, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
You go first. It's, you know, it's all COVID all the time, but you might know something that's coming up on the next agenda that I haven't seen yet.
Well, no, I have the advantage of actually going. I have another computer here, so I get to go through the old board agendas, our board agendas, while they're talking. So I have the advantage of actually having made a list. So
Go for it. I do not have another computer out here, so.
yeah, I figured you did. I see you walking around, so I think that would be a good trick. So we've been, you know, quite active on COVID-related stuff and a couple other things. I guess the first thing is we got to report. We get a report every meeting really on how distance learning is going. As you guys know, we opened 100% distance learning in the middle of August. So now we're about just going on a month, 4 weeks of full distance learning. And I think the headline is it's going pretty well. Obviously, distance learning has severe limitations and does not serve all kids well, does not serve all kids equally. But I think the feedback we get, both informal and we did an extensive survey that had almost 4,000 respondents, students and parents after 2 weeks of distance learning. And in general, the reviews are positive. And I think it's a reflection of, well, I know it's a reflection of the significant effort that the district and especially the teachers made to both the district to provide training and resources, the teachers to take advantage of them, even during the summer when they're technically not on the clock and not obliged to do anything. Virtually all our teachers took additional training that was prepared by the district over the summer when as part of getting ready for this year. And that all that effort was reflected in the experience that kids have. And I would say not a day goes by that we don't get a unsolicited email from either a student or parents saying, hey, you know what, this is actually going really well for my kids. You know, we love our teacher, our teachers have done a great job. And, you know, while this is hard, it is something that is working for our students or our family. So I think that's nice. And obviously it doesn't speak for everybody. I don't want me to imply that it's working for everybody, but I think that is the reports that we've gotten have indicated that it is a well-managed, well-developed, well-thought-through offering that is working for many students. There are definitely limitations. We get lots of reports of things that need to change. One of the big ones is that we've gone to largely synchronous learning, which in ed lingo means that we're live streaming teachers connected with students at the other end of Zoom. And that leads to what I'm sure you're all familiar with is Zoom fatigue. Zoom fatigue is real, my friends, and students definitely experience, as do teachers. And so we're we're constantly, and I think we're probably at the cusp of, we're reforming some of our practices, changing our schedule, changing the teachers, changing the way they handle classrooms and breaks, to make sure that we address some of these weak spots in the based on the feedback that we're getting. So I guess the overall takeaway would be pretty positive reviews and a concerted effort to get better and to iron out the rough spots. Second is we've gotten iterations of our safety plan, and the mega safety plan is obviously coming out this Friday related to school reopening, but there's been incredible amount of work done to make our facilities safe. I mean, as Dr. Austin mentioned, I forget at what venue, at some venue recently, we have almost 600 people actually in our facilities every day. Dr. Austin, correct me. I don't want to put out misinformation. What was it that you said in terms of attendance at our facilities?
Yeah. So even went back and added to it. So when you put in childcare and everything else with other employees, we are in the ballpark of 800 staff and students officially on our campus any given day right now.
So I think there is probably most people have a sense that schools are closed. Maybe there's a custodian, maybe there's a principal, you know, one or two people wandering around while a tumbleweed goes across the courtyard. And it isn't like that. You know, we've got a lot of people, 800 people working in our facilities. And as a result, we need robust safety practices. And so we've been getting reports on that. And then when you go to any of our campuses, you will see signage, distance markers, things on the floor telling people where to go, things on the wall, reminding of rules. Every door of every building has the cleaning schedule, has the, there are three, the cleaning protocol, the cleaning schedule, which has it initialed and signed every time the room gets cleaned. And there's a third piece of paper that I can't remember what it is. But there's an incredibly robust effort that's been put into place to make sure that our facilities are safe for use, and even as important, to make it clear to people and to give them confidence that they are safe for use. Because as we know, you know, fear is a big enemy in these kind of things. And so to the extent that fear is not appropriate, sometimes fear is appropriate. But I think in our case, because of all the efforts we're making on safety plans, I think people can be confident that we are following the protocols that the county lays out for us. And we want to make sure they have ways of knowing that. So I think our safety team has reported on some of the issues, some of the things they've done, and that's been good. The third thing is we got we get, as you guys do, get substantial budget updates. We get 3 or 4 a year. This was called our first interim. And while it had some good news, it was mostly sobering news. The good news is because of the closure of the schools and the closure of much of the economy in the spring of last year, we didn't spend as much money as we usually do. Surprise. And so we ended up with a windfall of about $10 million. Now, a bunch of that money was just deferred. We had vendors who were signed up to do things that we needed them to do. They didn't do it, but it still needs to get done. So they'll do it in the new fiscal year. So that money just gets shifted from one fiscal year to another. We didn't lay off our staff or furlough people. So our personnel expenses, which are 85% of our total budget, was the same. We had a little bit of savings. We didn't hire substitute teachers as much. You know, there's some minor things that were savings, but anyway, so so a lot of that money will get eaten up as those services get rendered. But I'd say the good news substantially ends there. We are heading into a very difficult period where there's a lot of headwinds on property taxes. We got our first update from the assessor's office. While they are backlogged at processing assessment challenges. But there is the leading indicator was the backlog they have is 9 times the average number of assessment challenges. So people are looking to get their properties assessed. I assume that's both residential and commercial, which obviously is a forward indicator of downward pressure on property taxes. That's the major source of revenue for PAUSD. So it is, I think we are all anticipating that even our forecast this year of 3.5% growth may end up being optimistic. And the long-term picture obviously is unknown, but we are not taking for granted that there will be continued robust increases in property taxes going forward. So, and state revenue obviously is under a great deal of pressure. State income is getting hammered. The schools were largely protected this year. We don't know if that'll continue in future years. Local giving, we got a lot from PI, about $6 million last year. They've lowered their target for the year. They don't know if they'll be able to hit their target. No one knows anything. So we're really looking at a scenario where most of our sources of revenue over the next few years are uncertain and certainly under pressure. So, and so our CFO, Ms. Chow, showed us a 5-year forecast, as she always does. All 5 years, the next 5 years were in the red, based on basically rollover expense budgets and no increases in staff compensation. And we were in the red anyway. So it's going to be a challenging time. And to Mr. Tanaka had mentioned Measure O, that's assuming Measure O is renewed. If Measure O is not renewed, the impact on our budget is $16 million a year. And it was so horrifying. I've kind of blocked out what the cumulative losses are over 5 years at our current expense level without the Measure O revenue. It was something like, Dr. Osler and Mr. Brianza remind me, maybe $60 million deficit.
It was $60 million.
Yeah, over 5 years, which is basically to say it would wipe out every reserve that we have. Some people think PAUSD is over reserved. One look at this forecast and it's hard to feel that way. And this would basically wipe out, any reserves, and it'd be red going forward as far as the spreadsheet could be extended. So there would have to be significant changes in our expense budget to reflect the loss of the partial tax revenue if we're not able to retain it. So a pretty sobering report. I mean, I know you guys went through this in the spring. The city went through this in the spring, significantly reduced your budget. The way school finance works is that we generally get most of our sources are slow to decline, but once they decline, it's like gravity. It's inevitable that they do so. And so we largely got a pass in the last fiscal year, but the chickens are coming home to roost, as we knew they would. And we are anticipating that the next 2 or 3 or longer fiscal years will be fiscally challenging for the district. I see Mr. Tanaka's hand up. Before we go to you, Mr. Tanaka, I just want to see Mr. Brianza. That was my report. Did you have anything to add?
That was both in-depth and depressing. Not really. I mean, for all the time that we aren't open, we continue to not stay open. There's normal rent income that we rely on that we're not getting. And believe it or not, every day that we aren't open and we aren't serving a bunch of kids that are paying for lunch, we lose. That costs us about $14,000 a day just to sort of have our cafeteria open for free and reduced lunch, but without the paying kids also there. So, we can't open yet, but every day we're in the red on that too. So, but I think that's it. There's, we continue to get reports that we are interested in, but aren't really focused on at our meetings, whether it's a Title IX update or a Public Records Act or a test score, test scores. And I know we just got our the quarter report, our 5-week progress reports just came out for high school, early secondary students. So I guess in the next 5 more weeks, we'll get a DF report. So those things are still coming, but obviously most of our conversation is around COVID.
All right, I see Councilmember Tanaka's hand up. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, thank you so much for that update. I was wondering how property taxes were looking. We haven't actually analyzed it much on the city side, so it was interesting getting the updates from you. One thing I can say that is I held regular office hours, and one of the topics that have been coming up a lot recently is a lot of residents are having trouble. Like a lot of them got laid off or took a big pay cut, and so it's a little bit scary out there. So I'm not surprised that donations are probably down too high, because it seems like people are struggling. I mean, I think initially it was a lot of just the frontline workers, but unless you work at Google, Facebook, or one of the there's a few companies, a handful of companies that are doing extremely well, but a lot of them are not doing well, and a lot of them have instituted a lot of cost reduction measures that are impacting people. And so, which I think is the vast majority. There's a few lucky people who work for the high flyer companies, but a lot of people don't. And so I think what you're saying about the pie projections are probably in line with what I'm seeing, just from my office hours, which are very anecdotal. As you know, property tax is a pretty big part of our budget too. Like maybe not as big as yours, but it's a pretty big chunk. So it makes me wonder about our projections, because we got a sales tax report as well, and for Q1, and it is pretty dire. If you look at Stafford Shopping, it doesn't take a genius to know that already. Let's look at Stafford Shopping Center, just look at the retail here, but it's showed our city in pretty bad shape, even relative to other cities. So yeah, it's going to be I think tough for both organizations. So I think we need to work together, do what we can to kind of shore up things. But I think the next few years are going to be challenging for all of us.
Actually, if I can just build on something you said, just a note for the staff. We do both rely on property tax revenue, and I think something I've heard about, and I'll make the proviso only from really geeky people, is comparing the way we handle our property tax forecast versus the way the city does. Not the way we handle it, but just sometimes they're different. And the question is, why two agencies have different forecasts on the same revenue source?
We should have the same.
Which I think is a very valid. But when I said geeky people, I was including Councilmember Tanaka, who I know has raised this issue before, but so have others. And I've noted it as well. And so I think it would be a good practice on staff's part on both sides to get in contact with your counterpart. And in our organization, that's Ms. Carolyn Chow, who's our Chief Financial Officer, or Chief Business Officer, and talk about how we're thinking about it, what kind of forecasts we put in, what we're hearing from the assessor's office, and I think that would give both the elected officials and the community kind of confidence that we've kind of at least compared. If we're not the same, we've at least compared notes and we know why. So anyway, just some feedback based on, I think, Councilmember Tanaka's legitimate point that you look at it too, and your forecasts are often different than ours.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions on that, or we can move to the next item? Okay, seeing none. The next item is item 5, which is what we've been talking about all morning: COVID coordination update. And I'm not sure who's got the ball for this one. Assistant City Manager, is that you?
Well, no, I think it's just been something that's been regularly on the agenda since March. I know that the city manager and Don have talked about various activities. I'm going to follow up once you release your safety report. I'd like to know more about the signage and that bit of information. I think it will be important for us in the city to do something similar And at this point, staff are working from home. I know that there are many, many out in the field: police, fire, public works, utilities. And those people who are working from home are also experiencing Zoom fatigue, I'm sure, like you mentioned. But I certainly want people to understand that the city is open for business. All of the different departments are offering services, either virtually or by appointment. So please don't think that just because you can't walk into an office freely, that doesn't mean that we're either not there or unable to help. But in terms of reopening, I think that looking at what you guys have come up with will be very important. We did briefly touch on testing for employees. We are investigating some other options, and certainly I know that Ed and I know the city manager and superintendent will talk about that. We are looking at mobile options so that they can come to different sites. We're looking at possibilities with different healthcare providers. At the moment, the cost per test is really expensive, and as we look at budget limitations, we're a little concerned about that. But we know that there's various opportunities with, through insurance providers, as well as available CARES Act fund and other things. I don't know if the superintendent has anything to add to that.
Before you jump in, Dr. Austin, I just want to say, I think you make a really good point. I think to the extent that you guys have not done things like distancing signage and, the kind of in-building things that we've done, again, this is something I've learned over the last 4 years as an elected official that I'd never really thought about before, is to the extent our constituents get comfort when we coordinate.
Yeah.
They implicitly, I don't think they set out to do this, but they just implicitly end up comparing the different examples that they see, and what they see in terms of government agencies are you and us. And to the extent that we're different, it always raises the question of why are they different? Right. And is one better than the other? And did they talk to each other? And I think this is a situation where we can inspire confidence in the community by saying, hey, if the way the schools did it looks good, why don't we just do it their way?
Right.
And then
yes.
And then the community will say, wow, good, one seamless implementation, that looks good. So I encourage that if it makes sense.
Thank you. Yes, we have, we certainly have signage everywhere. I don't want to make it seem like we haven't done that work. And certainly I think for educational facilities and uses, there are different rules in place, and that also causes confusion with the public, I think. But I agree. I think that as much as we can look to each other for modeling how we're getting people into line. I mean, I don't know about you, but now when I have to go to a store or something, I'm automatically looking at the ground to see where is your X or your circle, where I'm supposed to stand, what I'm supposed to do. I look for the mask sign. I look for different things like that. So to the extent possible, yeah, I think that it will be great to have some coordination on that level.
Great. Sorry, Dr. Austin, didn't mean to jump in there.
No, it's all good. Hey, Monique, I'll have a revised draft that's getting very close to publication today. As soon as I get it, I'll send it to you.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Don't print it out at home.
Everything. What's that?
Don't print it out at home.
I don't print anyway, so.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we got a lot of the influence on our plan from Stanford. So again, if ours looks a little bit like Stanford and yours looks a little bit like us, then all three of us are on the same page, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
At least where it makes sense to. So yeah, otherwise I think we've covered everything, Todd.
All right, I see Councilmember Ku's virtual hand up.
I just wanted to say that I think schools are a little bit different from the city, whereas there's the individual rooms and touches and so forth. So like you said, posted on each door is what you can expect, who cleaned it, what time, and all that. I don't think for us in the city, unless it's at City Hall, we have that extensive need to do that. But certainly, I went out and passed out a whole bunch of posters to many businesses myself. So there are signs out, and it's great that we're working together on this to have more consistent messaging. The last thing I wanted to add is, as you're going through the plan, especially on the city side, to make sure that not only safe routes to school, but also the police are included in the conversation. So when the opening happens, there is some presence, not too much, but some. Make sure that everything is going on well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think as some people are aware, maybe not all, well, most people never knew what school resource officers were. But now they don't have to worry about it because we don't have them anymore. But as a result, there are not police officers who are dedicated to the to schools, who don't work with and for the schools now. And so to the extent that the police are involved in our operations, we need to kind of step up the level of coordination, because it won't be people who do it all the time. And we want to make sure they are properly calibrated for the way things work in schools.
I have to say the school resource officers, they're trained for that particular assignment. So yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments on this topic?
The only thing is I have to run to another meeting, but I think you guys are in capable hands, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tanaka. Okay, the next item is updates on ongoing matters, Coverly update. And I don't know who has this one.
That'll be Kristen.
Potato, maybe make it the new person. Chantel has to take. Oh no, here's Kristen.
No, Kristen's here.
Kristen, okay.
Good morning, everyone. I've been listening in all along, but just showing my face now. So with Coverly, we're continuing to work closely. The city and the school district staff are working closely to still, iron out some, I guess, well, maybe the better word is understanding how we work together now, since our lease has changed and we're both on Coverly. And what we've realized is there's a lot of, even though we're separate, there's still so much interconnectivity at Coverly. So the systems, how they function and work. So there's systems that work in the entire in all of the buildings. And it's not, this is the cities, this is the school districts. We have to work together to figure out how to keep those functioning and maintained. So we actually yesterday had our first regular monthly meeting between staff, and we're going to continue doing those, bringing in different staff who might have something that we need to discuss together. It is much better than trying to email 5 different people. So we'll start those up again in October. So just sort of navigating through this new arrangement and this, how we both can be successful in keeping the facility up and running and working together, working through some issues right now. But it continues to be a good relationship. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Don.
No, I'd say the same. I'd say my take on it is that we probably both underestimated how many things were going to be crossover, and things that are broken, deteriorated, deferred are harder to figure out now. Right. So that's anywhere from systems to asphalt. So it's what's under the ground, and it's the ground itself. So yeah, there's a lot, and we're gonna have decisions about what do we fix, what gets duct tape, what gets done right, and those aren't going to be easy. So it's just the reality of it, and I think there's just more of that than anybody really imagined. But we'll work through it.
Yep, agreed.
Great. Any comments or questions on this topic? I've got one. Yeah, I mean, this is the first I'm hearing that there are infrastructure issues that were beyond what we anticipated, and I won't ask you to go into them because it sounds like it's the usual death by 1,000 cuts when you go into an old facility, and no amount of diligence is going to catch it ahead of time because until you're there, you don't know. It does underscore to me how important it is to not flag in the efforts to redevelop Cumberly. Actually, it underscores for me. I mean, I think there's always been a trope that, well, yeah, sure, it's old, but, is it really so bad? Couldn't we just paint it? Which is, I think a legitimate thing to say. And any of us who ever lived in old houses, I lived on the East Coast, and you always live in pre-war houses in the East Coast. And, it's like, do I replace that ball and tube wiring? Do I replace that ancient furnace, or do I just, just do a little repair in one part of my house? And the answer is eventually you have to, especially if you're trying to, kind of do good things, you have to bite the bullet and make the infrastructure repairs. And often that leads to more extensive remodeling and redevelopment, because once you've opened all your walls, why not? And I think that's the case here. I mean, we've kind of pushed this facility to and maybe past its useful life. And for reasons, I mean, I don't think it's neglect. I think, the school district was uncertain about its views of the future of Cumberly. I think the city was trying to figure out what it wanted to do. And my view is that, we've got a clearer path at this point. We had the Cumberly visioning process, and there was a mechanism, as I think some people know, but a lot of people don't. There was a mechanism put in place as part of the proposed lease between our two entities back in the last winter, that created a joint ad hoc committee of 2 school board members and 2 city council members to work on exactly these issues, like what are the next steps in the process. The district appointed its members to that group, but the city, and it was ready to get going. The city, for whatever reasons, I think primarily because it was part of the lease and the lease did not get settled. And then we ran into COVID, and the original lease got torn up. We went to a different lease because of the city's desire to reduce its expenditures at Cumberly. And so we lost, never staffed the committee. It naturally has gotten distracted or focused appropriately, I wouldn't say distracted, with COVID-related stuff that takes precedence. But, this committee is still here. And I think it would be great. I think the only path forward that I know is for the city to staff its committee so that the committee can meet and start talking about how our two agencies work together for the future redevelopment of Cumberly. And so I just wanted to say that. I've mentioned it to Mayor Fine a couple times in the past. I've mentioned it to some of the other city council members. I do think that's a really important to do. And to the extent that the city has breathing space, I think it would be useful to do it now. And we still have our committee members appointed from January, and would be able to proceed as soon as the city was. So I hope we're able to pick that thread back up, because this to me underscores that the only path forward at Cumberly is redevelopment. We can only put so much duct tape on the place and expect it to still to fulfill the functions we want it to fulfill. So sorry for the long speech, but it really put me in mind of that, because, I guess I'm disappointed, but not surprised. It's a very old building. Any other comments before we move on? All right. All right, connecting Palo Alto grade separations. I know this one's on the city side because we don't know a ton about it.
Yeah, so I will, Monique, jump right in if that's okay with you. I just
Please.
have a very brief update. The first is I'm not assigned to this project right now, so this is an update from Philip Cami in our Office of Transportation. So I can give you where they are, and then if you all have follow-up questions, we'll just collect them and share them with Philip and loop back. So they recently conducted a virtual town hall on grade separation. Before COVID happened, we had a few town hall meetings planned and a couple other engagement opportunities. And because of COVID, we had to readjust those and regroup. So they regrouped and set up a virtual town hall, and it ran from August 19th until September 14th. And we had great momentum on that. So it was actually open a week later than the original deadline in terms of getting feedback from people. So though we don't have the final numbers yet, we do know that we had over 1,000 unique visitors to the virtual town hall, and we received over 600 feedback forms. So having organized some of the in-person town halls before, I can tell you that's pretty significant in terms of feedback and number of people being able to see the information. I think our in-person town halls before, we would get up to between 150 and 200 people. So this is really great in terms of expanding the opportunity for people to weigh in. And then in terms of the process, the expanded community advisory panel, the XCAP, will be providing an update to the city council at this upcoming meeting on Monday, September 21st. And the XCAP is currently deliberating on various alternatives for rail grade separation options for all of the 3 locations, and is expected to provide their final report to the city council in October this year. Following the XCAP final report and city council's direction, staff will work to finalize the project study report, which is expected to be completed either at the end of this year or early into next year. So that's where they are. The report for Monday's meeting, I believe, is already out. Monique, can you agree? Not, let me know. We'll double check that. And yeah, so we'll have a deeper dive into that at Monday's council meeting. And that concludes what I have.
Thank you. Brianza, I couldn't tell if you were scratching your head or raising your hand. Scratching your head? Okay. Well,
Just scratching my head.
Okay.
Just
Councilmember
my little guy finally had a break, so I got to come back inside.
Good for you. Councilmember Koo, please go ahead.
I did want to provide a heads up that at one of the last expanded citizen advisory panel meetings, they did take a vote on the Churchill Street, and the vote was 6-3 for closing Churchill. So I think that that's something that we should let you know about early on, just so that you are aware.
And that was an advisory vote by that committee?
Yes, and their vote is to recommend to council to close. So that would be in their report that is coming to council on the date that Chantal had just mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Chantal, the one thing that I'll add is, and I'm sure you've heard it from others, but I'll just add my voice, is it's really important for the schools that pedestrian and bike traffic be given the same level of consideration as car traffic. You know, the vast majority of our kids walk and bike to school. And so when we close crossings and that reroutes either both pedestrian and bike traffic or just car traffic, we have to look at the implications of that on existing bike traffic and existing pedestrian. Like we've certainly heard about how if Churchill's closed, more cars will be on Embarcadero. And Embarcadero is obviously an incredibly, you know, it's a major arterial for pedestrian and bike students to get, particularly to Palo High School. And so we just have to make sure that's given equal consideration and study, and is not an afterthought. So just wanted to underscore that. I know you know that.
And I will pass that along to Philip and the team as well. And I know that part of the mitigations that they've looked at has always included keeping bike and pedestrian access at Churchill as well. So making sure that that connectivity hasn't been lost.
Thank you. Councilmember Koo, is that your hand up again or from before? We do have one member of the public wanting to comment, so can we take that comment now?
Yes, so Penny Elson, I will allow you to speak. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to speak on this matter.
Thank you. So I just have a couple things to say. One is that I've already expressed this to city staff. It's disappointing to me that, especially in South Palo Alto, where there are 0 grade separated crossings right now, either for cars or bicycles, anywhere from Oregon Expressway all the way to San Antonio Road. Those are the only, there's nothing in between at all compared to 5 in North Palo Alto. It's disappointing to me that there's not one single plan that really is feasible, except for the one Elizabeth Alexis proposed, that separates bicycles from car traffic on Alma. Given the cost and scale of these projects, it's surprising to me that bike ped improvements were not incorporated from the get-go. Given the number of kids, particularly on East Meadow, who are bicycling to school across, a multi-lane expressway with fast-moving traffic, yeah, there's a signal there, and yeah, during school commute times, we have a crossing guard, but the fact of the matter is kids are commuting through there from after-school activities when there is no crossing guard. So what we have is a set of plans where they were developed to prioritize motor vehicle operations, and the bicycle pedestrian improvements were really shoehorned in at the end, and they have not been reviewed by the City School Traffic Safety Committee, and they didn't get to payback until it was too late to make substantive changes, and that's a disappointing state of affairs. So I just want to be clear that I don't see a project that really provides bicycle pedestrian safety for kids on the table right now. And that's a frustrating state of affairs.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just add, from a process point of view, I think the timing's obviously been difficult because, since March, both the community has been largely consumed by COVID concerns. And so this process has gone forward, but with a very distracted community. And I think, Ms. Elson's comments may be a harbinger of something that will happen, is because when proposals are finally, and this has been an incredibly complicated process. I don't have to, I know you guys are living it. So it's one of the most complicated building projects that we've ever considered in Palo Alto, maybe the most complicated. And so when this comes to fruition and there are proposals on the table, I think there's a serious risk that the school community will say, this does not meet our needs. And then we'll be at and I'm not talking about elected officials, I'm talking about, moms and dads and students saying, now that we focus on this, now that there aren't 17 proposals and 5 committees and 27 meetings and virtual whatevers, now that we're looking at concrete proposals, this does not meet our needs, or we don't think we got a fair shake on this. And I think, while that's regretful, I think that's very possible. And Ms. Elson is, sort of a leading indicator of how those people may feel. And I think, obviously that creates real challenges, because I expect the city will need to go out for financing for this. And to the extent that the school community does not feel that it meets their needs, that could really undermine the financing proposals. So I don't have a solution to this problem other than to try to figure out how to engage, to anticipate the needs of that community, especially since they're still distracted and not, we're trying to reopen schools in 3 weeks. So their attention is fully and appropriately on that. But trying to engage that community to the extent you can, trying to anticipate the needs of that community through alert spokespeople like Ms. Elson, and trying to incorporate the fact that you may have significant new stakeholders weighing in on these proposals late in the process into your thinking and expectations, because that's just the way I think it's going to be. So anyway, I pass that on as, you know, my 2 cents worth. I do think those are very important points that will need to be dealt with at some point. Emmett, okay, good. Ms. Ellison, I did see your hand up again, but I think by our rules, we only allow speakers to speak once per item. So apologies for that. All right, any other comments on this issue? Okay, that's the only other thing on our agenda is future meetings and agendas. What we've done, frankly, the last couple of meetings is basically rolled over the agenda because these items are, you know, kind of ongoing sagas, not kind of point updates. Is there any, yes, go ahead, Chantel.
In my coming back, trying to figure out everything that has happened since I've been out, thank you all for your patience with me. I had a list of things that I believe have come up as of interest to the committee. So I wanted to throw those out and confirm them so that I can make sure we're planning the rest of the year. So the items that I have, and thank you, Monique, for listening over the last couple of months and compiling this for me. But there was a request for an update on NVCAP. There's the Safe Routes to School presentation, which we previously mentioned will come next month in October. We have confirmed that with staff. And the next one is a PTA Communications Council. There was some interest in something related to that. And there was also update on programs the city is still offering for teens. I think that's it. Monique, did I leave any out?
And I think at one point we had asked to do a comparison or a report on what budget has from the city to the schools, what has been paid out. I think that was something, and something that you actually brought up earlier today related to property tax was sort of why are they calculated differently, and how does each organization view that information?
So could I ask a favor? I mean, we can call out, looks like we have a couple of comments, but could you write down that list and maybe we can circulate it and get a sense from the school, you know, a sense from the members of what they want to deal with in the next few months?
Yes, of course. I will email that out.
Why don't we do Mr. Brienza and then Councilmember Cruz?
Chantel, I just wanted to know, I think you said PTA committee, or were you talking about public school people and private school PTAs? What could you say more about that?
Actually, there had been a referral to me about the communications and using the PTA communications engine for city communications about testing, COVID updates, things like that. So Great. It was really just following up and making sure that we were making use of that and sharing information. So it would just be a report.
Okay.
And council member?
Also, I've been contacted by a member of a consortium that's called Alto, and they're through the county supervisor, Joe Samidian had, I think it's out of that office. And basically they're gonna be opening a drop-in teen center here in Palo Alto. And I was wondering, would you consider or entertain having them come and provide a short presentation?
Yes, I'm sorry. I remember you now saying that. And so Alcove, and I think we wanted an update also on what is Project Safety Net moving to nonprofit status away from the city, tied in with what else are teens doing. But you're correct. I neglected to add that, but Alcove is on the list. Thank you.
If you need help with that, Dr. Adelsheim, who is, I believe, the person in charge of that project, we're in contact with him. So we can put you in touch with him if that's helpful, or you may have your own contacts. But yeah, what a great idea. Thank you for suggesting that, Councilmember Crew. I think that's a great idea, as is the project safety, looking at project safety net and getting a presentation on that. Both great ideas. All right. I think that's the last item on our agenda. So at 9:52 a.m., this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.